All right, welcome everyone to the Evolution of Aloha podcast, a Plowline production. I am your host, Dr. Jerry Balarosa Tennell, and today we'll be talking to Dr. Shukri Olow, a proud refugee from Somalia running for state representative of the 47th Legislative District. But before we get started, one of the first things that I like to do is honor the land in which our feet stand. And I will begin by acknowledging that those of us who are gathering in the Seattle area, we are on the ancestral homelands of the Coast Salish people who have lived in the Salish Sea Basin since time immemorial. We respect this place and honor the sacred spiritual connection to the land, water, and its people, past, present, and future. And by acknowledging these lands and their original indigenous inhabitants, we reach back to our own indigenous roots and reflect on the impacts of colonialism and the lands from which all our people come. We're connected to our ancestors through our connection to land, for the land is what connects us all. So please join me in taking a moment to honor the land of the traditional people and the territory in which you stand. And today I honor the Tulalip tribes and allied bands for their enduring care and continuous protection of the land where I currently reside. So Shukri, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jerry, for the opportunity to be in conversation with you. And thank you for that beautiful land acknowledgement.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you're running for state representative.
I am running for an open seat here in the 47th Legislative District, which covers the cities of Kent, Auburn, and Covington. This isn't my first rodeo at politics. I'm sure we'll talk more about what I'm doing and what I'm hoping to see in terms of impact for our local communities.
Well, tell me, what is it? What is it that you're looking to accomplish and see and do and all of that good stuff?
Yeah, some might recall that I ran for office the first time last year. I ran for a position called King County Council District 5. It's a district that includes 7 cities in South King County, one of the most diverse regions of Dr. Martin Luther King County, including the cities of Kent, where I grew up, Renton, Berrien, Des Moines, Normandy Park, and others. And learned a lot from that race and had an opportunity to organize with community and build a co-governance model with people who've never had any interaction with local government, and raised a ton of money and figured out that I was really good at, organizing and coalition building. And while the outcome of the results of that election were not in our favor, I continue to be inspired by the work that we did together in community. And earlier in the year, around mid-March, there was an opening to run for a state representative position. We had a state representative by the name of Pat Sullivan representing this LD for about 18 years. And so he retired this year. And there were a couple of transitions also in the same LD with Senator Mona Das not seeking re-election. And so there were some shifts happening. And those shifts, I think, created an opportunity to run again. I thought long and hard about, if this was something that I could do again, because I think it's incredibly challenging to be running as a woman, as a Black woman, as a Muslim woman, as a refugee, as a single parent, and all the, other identities that I think many of us hold in community. And so I made the decision and have been able to get the support of many folks in community, and including elected officials, 2 representatives from the district, Representative Deborah Intiman and Senator Mona Das and others. And what we're hoping to do in this campaign is to amplify the voices of people, working people who deserve policies that could shift their lives from a space of not only surviving but thriving, including our elder community, our parent community, parent and caregivers, by providing childcare access, and making sure that we invest in K-12 education, especially now, given the pandemic that we've all endured.
So what made you do this? Why politics?
Oof, Jerry, that's a great question, and one that I think about every day. What am I doing, and why am I doing this to myself? And actually, that's something that my therapist recently has been helping me to sort of unpack. My purpose and my why of leaning in and putting myself out there and taking the risk to lead. But I never thought that I would be here. I never thought that I would be running for office. I've spent about 15 years in community, from working on housing policy and community organizing to making sure that children have access and their families to childcare, quality and affordable childcare. Currently, I'm a division director at the city of Seattle. And so I've always been sort of behind the scenes because I think there's so many different ways to lead, And so politics was something that I'd never imagined for myself, but I think it was on the radar for many people who knew me and knew what I was capable of, who then I think were able to guide me to the place that I'm in now. And my why continues to be, my children, right? Making sure that I create the kind of conditions for them to, to live and to be loved and to be seen and to be valued in their community. My why continues to be Black and Brown folks who don't have that level of representation they need in politics, not only in terms of, people who look like us, but also people who will legislate policies that will have a positive impact on our communities. And ultimately hoping that I could, do my part in lifting the burden that so many communities have held for a very long time.
Yeah, it's like people have been asking, like, you should run for politics. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what it means to be a politician. So what does it mean to be a politician?
I heard that, it takes about 7 people to encourage women of color in particular, to run for office. And I think, I'm probably not your 7th, I'm probably like your 100th person to tell you, because we need you, Dr. Jerry, we need your voice, we need your brilliance, we need your compassion, we need your strong sense of conviction and liberation orientation for our communities. And so I wanna encourage you again. I think it means a lot of things for a lot of different people. What I think it has meant for me, as last year it was my first time running for office. I didn't have any connections to a lot of the elected officials. Didn't have, a robust background in fundraising. I grew up in poverty. I grew up in a Section 8 household right here in the city of Kent. And so I didn't have sort of the types of networks that people typically have when they aspire to be in these sorts of roles. I was just somebody who grew up in this community, was loved on by so many in this community, including educators and social workers and folks who, worked at the food bank and other places, and wanted to give back. I just wanted to do my part in making sure that people got what they need. And, it's been quite an interesting experience. And Dr. Jerry, one day I think I'll write about this because, sometimes I'm like, why am I doing this to myself? I'm not sure exactly what more to share, but, on the good days, right? Like, we're in deep conversation around really important topics like education, access, and how to build more affordable housing. And how do we help support young people who have been impacted by an ongoing pandemic, and an ongoing pandemic, that of racism. We're thinking through policy ideas and centering, those most impacted. And then on the other side, there are really hard days when you hear things about yourself, right? And when you have people making assumptions about your values and wanting to sort of put you in a box, and really, I would say, even question your capacity and your abilities. And the first time when I was running, I think I internalized a lot of that, to be honest with you, the not feeling, qualified, and not feeling like I was worthy or that I was enough. And so I internalized the perceptions of people, and spent a lot of time, months, really trying to sort of unpack that, and came to the realization that it's an ongoing journey, but I think some of us have to be in this position so that generations to come, women, folks of color have an easier runway. We got to struggle now for those who I think are behind us, who will, do the great work that we're trying to start right now.
Right. And, it's like just listening to you speak about your why and how you're navigating these spaces, it's helping me to think about a politician in a different way. I think in my head, every day I am decolonizing myself. And in my mind, and what I see as a politician is a white guy in a suit
Yeah,
saying all of these big words. And,
right.
that's what I see. But it's like you have actually, you're decolonizing politics for me, that it is about community, it is about family, it is about, having people like you and me not only survive, but to thrive and
Mm,
to also, find this place of compassion and empathy in a
mm,
community that can help us grow and be well. So it's like, thank you for doing that. One of the things that is also interesting is you talked a lot about the different intersectionalities that you have,
mm.
right? It's like, how do you work through those intersectionalities, especially in a time like today? I mean, we just arrested 31 people. Some of them came from Washington over in Coeur d'Alene.
Right.
How do you do that? How do you work through that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wanted to go back to something that you said as well, which was, the vision or the image that comes to your mind when you think about a politician. And that is so true, right? Like we think about that vision and have that in the back of our heads because that's what we've seen for a very long time, for
Mhm.
generations, right? And that's, I think, what many of us believed a politician should be and should look like and should aspire to be in that type of role, right? People who look like white men, right? And I think it took me a long time to even figure out that you don't have to look like that, right? That there is a place for those of us who don't have that lived experience and don't have that racial ethnic identity to also take up space and to take up
Yes.
space confidently and to take up space knowing that we belong here, right? And that this is our place too. And so it took me a while, but it's definitely been part of an ongoing reflection that I've had with myself. To get to your question about sort of the multiple identities that we hold, I hold in particular, like I don't know if I've arrived, right? I don't know if there's an arrival point because there's often just so much information coming at us. And I've had from last year's election and even this one, so many different people having different thoughts about, what I should do and what I should wear and how I should message, the specific issue and what that might provoke if, a specific type of voter read it that way, or, if I should think about wearing my hijab down or up, or I've also had those kinds of conversations with myself, right? Um, and I don't know. I don't think I've definitely arrived yet. I'm still a work in progress and trying to figure out how I can be my authentic self in a space that isn't inviting to that doesn't see the value of me being my whole self. And I've been really inspired by Black women in particular who've been able to do that, like including Representative Jamila Taylor and Representative Kirsten Harris Talley from the 37th. Jamila's in the 30th. And, from afar, right, my perception is that they have it figured out. But I don't even know if that's true. I don't know if we've been able to create the conditions for people to be who they are,
Mhm.
unapologetically who they are. So
Right.
we've got work to do.
Right, exactly. And again, it's like you know, y- you are probably the 100th person that told me that I should run for office. And it's in the back of my head. And it's like I'm going to be having my third grandchild is going to be entering this world in just a few more weeks. And it's, my granddaughter. And so it's like I have two grandsons and it'll be my first
First
granddaughter.
granddaughter. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
And so, I have two sons, I have two grandsons. This is going to be my first granddaughter. And there's something inside of me that is shifting, that is changing,
Mm,
that is having me look at the world differently. And, it's like as my oldest grandson is 13, I can see on how he's changing, like he's becoming part of the world. His innocence as a child is shifting. And I'm like, oh my goodness, is the world ready for him? Is
mm.
he ready for the world? What is he entering into? And what about this next generation? And so I continuously look at that, and what is my calling? What is my responsibility? Are people, if I run for politics, I come with a very strong decolonial lens. Are people ready to talk about decolonization, right? I mean, those are some of the
Valid
things.
questions.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, especially, with everything that is going on right now in our world. Running for politics as a woman of color, as a Muslim woman, that's, to me, is like, oh my gosh, that is so courageous. And I don't know if, sometimes I feel like, is that the wrong way to look at that? Or is there such a thing? Because I know what the world holds, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have so many thoughts on this, Jerry. And my initial thought is the world has to be ready because we are here, right? And I'm not planning on going anywhere. I came to this country when I was 10 years old from the refugee camps of Kenya. I was originally born in Somalia and spent about 6 years of my life in a refugee camp following the Somali Civil War in 1991. And my mother and my two siblings and I grew up right here in South County in the city of Kent. And we're not planning on leaving, right? Like our home is here. And so I want to be able to think about how I can create the kinds of conditions that I didn't have access to, the kinds of welcoming environments that I didn't have access to for my children, right, who were born here, and for generations to come. And so sometimes I struggle with that too, because I wonder, I didn't create these conditions, right? Like I didn't create racism.
Right.
I'm impacted by it. So many of us are impacted by it. And so to expect and to feel that the people who are disproportionately impacted by something have to then unpack and undo that something is a huge burden to hold. And yet at the same time, I also think about my immigrant privilege, right? I haven't been here generationally. I haven't been indoctrinated in this way or conditioned in this way. And so I have a duty to do my part as an immigrant, to continue the torch that Indigenous people, Black people, other communities of color have shouldered for generations, right? And so I think it depends on the day. Some days I'm like, I'm tired. I want to let this burden down for a minute and just think about, joy and, doing my part in my own household. And the other days I think about the intersections of like housing and education and healthcare and, of this pandemic and who is most impacted. And then I'm like, okay, that's enough reason or fire to do my part, right? Like I have to get back up. I have to hold this burden. I have to do my part. And I don't know. I think most days are really difficult to try to figure out that balance. But today I feel really inspired. I was at my daughter's sixth grade graduation, and so many of those young people are having these kinds of conversations, right? They are the generation that we've been training and conditioning, and I've seen the kindness and the love that they give to each other. I saw all the kids like signing their friends' yearbooks and like asking, their neighbor sitting right next to them, like, did you get enough to eat, or do you want to go play together? And like many of these kids, don't share the same lived experience. And I was thinking to myself, like, I didn't have access to this. My elementary school was not like this when I first came here at the age of 10 and starting my formal education in the fifth grade right here in this district. And so I'm hopeful because I see that there is change happening. I see it in the classrooms. I saw it in my kiddo's school today, which I think gives me enough fuel to endure.
Yeah. So it's like there's a lot of things, a lot of heavy stuff that, it's like looking at what you want to do and what your vision is. What about resilience? How do you stay in a place where you are resilient and not just bouncing back, but having the capacity and the energy to continue the work in the middle of adversity?
Yeah, I love that word resilience. And lately I've been thinking about, but what if I didn't have to be?
Mhm.
What if I didn't have to be resilient, right? Like, what if I was given the opportunities that I needed, the support that I needed as a candidate for office? I think there's often a question about like electability. Is this person viable? Did they fundraise? Are they electable? And I think to myself, I would be if you endorsed, right? I would be if you hosted a fundraiser, or I would be if you were out there volunteering and door knocking. And which means, that I have to be resilient because I don't have another choice, right? I'm not given the support that I need. And so I have to figure things out. I have to exhibit grit, right? Like I have to persist.
Mhm.
But I know that also takes a toll. It takes a toll on our bodies. Often it's triggering, right? It's triggering our traumas. And I know that for a lot of candidates, folks of color in particular, it has impacted their mental health. In the last election cycle, so many candidates also ran for office. Many did not seek re-election. And I think, they've also been impacted by the constant need to persist and to be resilient, you know? And I don't know. I think there has to be a better way. We can't just expect our people to constantly be resilient. Like, give us what we need.
Mhm.
That is no longer a choice that we have
Right.
to make.
Right. And that takes a lot of support from people. And so how do you garner your support?
Yeah, for the campaign, my family has been a great support system. I would not be where I am today if it wasn't for my mother. My father died just a few months before the war in Somalia. He died in a tragic car accident, and so my mom raised us as a widow, three of us by herself, and there was a fourth kiddo who died in the refugee camps due to malnutrition. And so I tell my mom, I want to do this, or I want to get a doctorate, or I want to, get a position at the city, or I want to run for office again. And she just supports me without always understanding what it is, or what it is that I'm aspiring to do. She says, "When are you ready? Like, when are we doing this thing?" And I've just always appreciated her affirming my dreams, even when I didn't feel like I had a path or a good sense of direction. Like, she believes in me on days when I don't even believe in myself, and so my mom has been my greatest support system. My kiddos, when there's an opportunity to run again, I was talking to Callie, who's 10, and I said to him, Khalid, mommy, I want to run again. And, I want to get your blessing. And he said to me, mommy, this is your dream. Like, you tell us, yeah, you tell us all the time that, you want us to chase after our dreams and that our dreams are valid. And like, your dream is valid, and we support you. And yeah, having that foundation has been incredibly life-changing for me. And then there are elected friends and people, who've endorsed the campaign, and people that are able to hold me accountable to my values that I reach out to, continue persisting. It is a really difficult place, Jerry. Like, there's just so much pressure, so many things coming at you, so many different people who think they know you. And sometimes I think it feels dehumanizing. But on the other end, you have people who show up who you never thought would show up, right? People you haven't even met who are like, I'm tracking this race. I'm here to support you. Like, what do you need? And that has been a fuel, a fuel to keep going.
Well, it's, and it also sounds like you are a beacon of light for a lot of individuals who probably haven't felt seen before.
Mhm.
And that's I mean, that's a big responsibility. That's a big responsibility. And sometimes, it's like when I hear people from Hawaii and, a lot of Polynesian and Pacific Islanders, when they see me and the things that I do, they
Mm,
tell me, you represent us. And it
right.
scares me sometimes.
Oh,
It
yeah.
scares me sometimes because I'm like, oh gosh, um, don't put me up on a pedestal like this, because I'm only human and I have a lot of flaws,
Yeah.
and I will fail, and I don't want to hurt you, but I want to be human with you. And so support me in that, in being
Yeah.
human and not perfect. I don't walk on water, right?
Far from it. I am far from that for sure. Like, I feel that so much, and especially for people who have multiple identities. When I'm in a space, I'm thinking about those identities, right? Like, I'm thinking, like, I am a representation of Muslims right now, like in this moment, like, and many of the folks in this room have never had access to a Muslim, right? Have never met their Muslim neighbor. And so I have to be the best representation of that. Like, I have to go above and beyond to exude, what my faith says about our values, right? And then in other spaces, I'm like, okay, I'm a Black woman in this space right now. Like, this is who I am. And I have to, and then I'm a refugee right now. And I'm, an immigrant right now, right? Or I'm a mom right now. Like, I got this. Like, we can do multiple things. And so, I mean, and then at the end of the day, I'm like, okay, I'm just a human being. You know what I mean? And, we fail forward sometimes, and,
Mhm.
we make mistakes, and we're learning and we're evolving, right? The evolution of aloha, like, we're evolving beings.
Yes.
And I think sometimes, we forget that.
Yeah, exactly. I like that you say fail forward, because there's been a lot of moments, it's like I remember when I was in a conversation just before this, where I was talking about, going back home to Hawaii in between my bachelor's and my master's degree, thinking that I was better than everybody.
Mm,
And, it was being first generation higher ed, right? It's like being the first to have my master's, being the first to have my PhD, being the first to leave the island of Hawaii, being the,
mm,
and so it's like I got it into my head that, well, that means I'm just good. I'm awesome. I'm all of these things. Well, thinking back, I became all of these things thinking that I was better than my own people,
mm,
because I assimilated into a culture and a place where being who I thought I was based off of my survival.
mm,
And it was the only way that I knew that I would be accepted into this dominant society. And now that I look back at it, I realize that as I assimilated into this dominant society, I denied everything about who I was
mm,
as a Pacific Islander Polynesian woman from Hawaii. And it wasn't until someone brought it up to me where, I went back home and a really good friend of mine said, you know what, we don't like you very much. And I'm like, what? What do you mean? I'm awesome. I told myself I'm awesome. And
Right.
then they're like, well, when you come home, you don't remember who you are. You're talking all of these big words, you have all of
Mhm.
these degrees, and you talk down to us. You don't talk story with us anymore. And I had to sit with that for a moment. And so it's like, unpacking all of these narratives that I fell into was, it's like examining that decolonial mind that I had and being able to unpack it to where I'm like, oh, this is what code switching means.
Mm.
Oh, this is what it means to walk in two worlds. Oh, this is what it means to actually live aloha. And so it was the failing forward that brought me to this realization on how am I really stepping into my power? And
Mm.
am I lifting the voices of my people and standing on shoulders of giants, or am I doing this on my own where I'm continuously causing harm? And so there was a lot of things that I needed to make up for and make amends, which of course, sometimes making amends is not easy.
Right. Yeah, that level of self-awareness, Dr. Jerry, is incredible. I mean, so many of us are struggling to even get to that beyond the surface level of who we are.
Mhm.
So I love that you're able to go deeper.
Yeah, and it's also not it's not easy, when someone holds the mirror up, but it's like also in that place of when those conversations do come up, and
Mhm.
understanding that what's happening to my body, right? It's like feeling the blood pressure going up, feeling that the cognitive dissonance is setting in, that I'm stopped listening to the person. I just want to like go ahead and talk about myself and my point of view and why I did these certain things without actually listening to what kind of things did I say to harm, my family, my people, these individuals, and being able to apologize and make things right. And so I think that's where also the regulating my emotions, right? Where the
Mhm.
breath, the ha comes into it. And so really living aloha truly and fully, while still realizing that I live in a world where I want to share aloha, but the world don't know how to share aloha back.
Right, right. That's so powerful. I love that you had a community of people who were able to bring you back to your real self. Like, girl, if you don't come back, like you, I don't know who you think you are right now, but this isn't you. And stop with those big words and, put down your ego.
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, I've been also fortunate to have that in my siblings, and they don't always say the things that I want to hear, because we are awesome, right? Like we persevered. We were able to make it through systems that never invited us in,
Mhm.
right? And
Yep.
systems that actually made it really difficult for us to navigate through them and intentionally, right? And we made it through that, and now we're on the other side. And so, I mean, we are awesome. And on the other hand, um, sometimes I think when you rise up and sort of meet whatever the dominant culture's expectations of who you are, or when you exceed that, um, it's easy to forget who you actually are.
Yes.
I've
And
definitely
then
had my own moments as well.
exactly. But it's like when you know who you are and you
Right,
step into your power, it's
right.
like, watch out world. It's like I walk in flipping my hair and everything. It's like,
I'm actually learning how to do that a bit more this year. Last year, one of my personal struggles was like, I mean, I thought I knew who I was, right? I mean, I thought I knew my surroundings. I thought I knew how to navigate different environments. I thought I knew how to code switch perfectly. And, and obviously had some spaces where I could be my authentic self and was able to bring that. But I don't know if any of us actually ever arrive, right?
Right.
Um, we're constantly learning. And when I think back on the this time last year, I'm a completely different person. Like, I don't even know if that makes sense, but every year of growth has just been like, I'm like, who is this? I look back now and I'm like, wow, I did so much. Like last year, I was completing my doctorate and like working full time and, running a high profile race covered by like the Associated Press and like, parenting two children and being a daughter and a caregiver to my two, grandparents. And like, and there was a global pandemic and like a racial reckoning. And then I look back, I'm like, was I ever okay? Like, first of all, how? I'm like, what is wrong with me? Like, how did I do that? But now I'm like, okay, that's done. But also like I want ease.
Yes.
And getting to that place has just been I don't know. I'm learning to understand it.
Yes.
I don't
And
think
it's
I'm there yet.
right. And I like that you say that we haven't arrived, and I don't think we will ever. I mean, it's like, what does it mean to arrive? Because we are
Mhm.
in a constant state of evolution. And it's like, I just celebrated my birthday last week. And
Related.
thank you. And it's like I'm looking at my hair, I'm like, oh my God,
Mm,
raised, it's like my
wisdom.
body is not the same,
Mm,
it's like I'm 60, I'm like literally 60's knocking on my door right now. I just turned
mm,
56, and there's all of these things. And I look back, 5 years ago when I first entered into my doctoral program, and I'm
mm,
like, oh my goodness, the way that I think, the
mm.
way that I see things, the way that I see myself, the way I look at systems. And it's completely different. It's like getting to the place where whenever I hear people say, oh, the system is broken and we need to fix the system, I'm like, the system's not broken.
Mm,
System is doing exactly what the system was built to do.
what I
And
was
so
designed to do.
exactly, exactly. So if we want to change the system, the
Mm,
people that's within the system that is creating it needs to change first.
right.
Krishnamurti says that the only hope for humankind is in the transformation of the individual, which
Mm,
means that each and every one of us has to be able to have that deep self-reflection and awareness and regulation in order to create something greater than ourselves. And then also acknowledging that we wouldn't have been here if it wasn't for the ancestors. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for our children. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for everyone that we've been in relationship with.
absolutely.
So it's definitely a beautiful journey. But I was going to ask you, if you were to have this, if you were able to dream up a
Mm,
new world, what would that look like for you?
mm. I love that you asked that question because Dr. Bettina Love talks about dreaming, new systems, new ways of being, new ways of doing. Um, and it's a space that I'm often not in because I think I'm surviving, right? I'm sort of like, I just got to make it through today. Even though my therapist reminds me that it's not about making through today, it's about living today, right? It's about being in the present today and not planning, what's going to happen after the primary, or will I lose, or will I win, or, what kinds of change do I want to see? Today, my dream is for all beings to be happy and to be healthy and to be loved. At a policy level, Dr. Jerry, I don't know how we legislate through that. I don't know how we embed love in childcare policy or in affordable housing or in climate justice or in all of these issues that I think often intersect. Um, I want all of us to be loved and to be whole. That's what I'm dreaming about.
And that's, to me, that's aloha, right? When we're able to give and receive, aloha, the reciprocity of that, we could be able to create a different world. In the 5 phases of decolonization, which was written by Pokala Inui, a attorney and Hawaiian activist, the 5 phases is rediscovery and recovery, mourning, dreaming, commitment, and action. And so I think when we get to, when we start off with rediscovery and recovery, it's like you've kind of, you've shared it, shared about, you know, coming in, being born in Kenya and growing up in a refugee camp, right? It's like being able to see that coming here to the United States. So the rediscovery and recovery of all of these different ways of being and being in a different place. And then the mourning part of it, that, it's like we do live in this world where there is still divisiveness, but being able to dream about the unity that we can have, right? It's like that, being compassionate and empathetic towards each other, and look for the things that we can ground ourselves in, the commonalities that we have, and then the commitment to be like, all right, this is how we're going to do it. And that's what you're doing. You're committing to your community, and you're acting on it because you're running for state representative.
I love how you brought that all back together. I loved how you talked about the different aspects of rediscovery and recovery, because I've spent many times trying to sort of understand who I am in the context of this nation. And even that's evolved, right? And who I want to be and the kind of world I want my children to belong to. And yeah, and also, trying to be that difference by running for office. But I think, there's so many people, Dr. Jerry, who are doing that, who are not running for office, right? I think sometimes we tend to hold elected officials to a higher pedestal, or there's a different type of spotlighting that happens when people have that level of visibility. But, there are educators in our classroom who are doing that work. You're doing that work. Young people organizing are doing that work, trying to help us get to a place of love, of what Dr. King called creating a beloved community, right? And you don't just need a politician to do that. That takes all of us. Unity requires that we all feel like we have a stake in this work. And I think there are more people that definitely have been able to come to that realization, especially in the last few years, right? Like we're seeing that this pandemic, we're all interconnected, and we have no choice but to be together and figure things out.
Exactly. And all different levels as well too, right? It's like when we have to think about our environment. And I always share when I talk about, environmental justice, I have people think about the apple. I'm like, follow the apples. They're like, what do you mean follow the apple? I'm like, where'd your apple come from? Did it come from the tree outside? Did it come from the grocery store? Where did you get your apple? Where was the apple grown? Who grew the apple? Who picked the apple? What was the water like that watered the seed so that way you could have the apple? And you are now consuming all of this. Now you're consuming all of it. Now, what is the footprint of that apple? And they're like, whoa, I'm going to look at an apple completely different. I'm like, exactly.
I'm looking at an apple completely different now. I'm going to follow the apple.
Follow the apple. I mean, it's like, who picked the apple? And what about the people that picked their apple?
Right.
What were their lives like? It's like, think about everything that just goes into that single thing, and we can find the interconnectedness with everything else around us. And that's, I feel, it's like, as you were talking about dreaming, and you brought up Dr. Martin Luther King, of that beloved community.
Mm.
I feel that that is something that you, as the state representative of the 47th legislative district, is going to bring to that community, is being able to create the beloved community, a place where everyone is going to feel like they belong, and they feel loved, and they're honored, and they are able to be seen. And so I am so excited. And I hope that from state representative, you do something even bigger, so that way you affect my district and where I'm at in Bothell and King County.
You have great people down there. Mary
Yes.
Fossey, I think, is well known. I don't know if her district covers Bothell, but Remy, the deputy mayor of Bothell, is someone that you should be connected to, because I do see politics in your future, Dr. Jerry. I'm serious. I'm serious. Like, we need you. We need women like you who lead with your values, who understand that, like, this isn't about visibility. Like, this is about liberation,
Absolutely.
and I hope you consider that. And I am going to be the first one on that line of supporters right there to back you up. I
Well,
mean it.
thank you. Thank you. Well, what are some of the things that's coming up that you would like our listeners to know, or, hear?
Yeah, well, thank you so much again for the opportunity just to be human in this space. I'm often in different sort of environments and have to censor myself, and have to figure out sort of, did I just say the right thing or the wrong thing? And I did not feel that in the hour that we've been in conversation. And so thank you for the environment that you created for me to be my authentic self. If folks want to learn more about the campaign, our website is www.electshukri.com, elect, SHUKRI.com. And you will see the different events coming up. We have our kickoff on the 23rd of June in the city of Kent. We're doing it at an Iraqi restaurant in the district. And there'll be lots of opportunities to engage with the campaign. The primary is coming up August 2nd. And so we'll see what happens after that. And then after that, there's a general election in November as well. I wanted to also mention that, my name itself, right, is doing the work that I'm hoping to do, right? Like, when people see a name like Shukri, which in Arabic means shukran, which means thankful. It means thankful or thank God. That itself is an impact, right? And that's the type of impact that I want to be able to bring to our community, to show little girls, especially, that they can dream, and that their dreams are also valid. So thank you for letting me plug in the campaign information. And I look forward to seeing Dr. Jerry in Congress.
We'll see. We'll see. All right. Just for clarification, the areas that you cover is Kent, Covington,
and Auburn.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that all of our listeners in that area has your information, so then that way, when it's time to go out and vote and support you in any way, that that they'll be there for you. So I'll let my people know.
I appreciate that.
Well, thank you so much for being here and spending this hour with me. Again, everyone, you have been listening to the Evolution of Aloha podcast, a Plowline production. Tune in for upcoming episodes with other amazing people. And don't forget to subscribe to the Evolution of Aloha and Plowline podcast, available on all of your popular podcast platforms. There's also an exclusive video content for members only on Patreon. So please help us by continuing this work by becoming a supporter, and head over to patreon.com/Plowline Productions. Your contributions will go directly towards producing and building engaging and quality content. So thank you again, everyone. Until next time, a hui hou. Please take care of yourselves and each other. And again, Much aloha to everyone. So thank you. Thank you, Shukri, for being here.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.